The Alabama state legislature recently passed a law that would ban all abortions, including for survivors of incest or rape. The only exception to the ban is to save the life of the mother. Doctors who perform abortions may be prosecuted as felons. Georgia passed a law banning abortions after the detection of a fetal heartbeat, which is usually around 6 weeks into a pregnancy, and often before a woman may know she is pregnant. 14 other states have similar laws, including Florida, Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, and Kentucky. Fetal heartbeat is a deceptive term. It is not a formed heart. It is the first cellular pulsing. Medically, a fetus is human when it is viable, that is, when it is able to live outside the mother's womb. 2 comments. First, Alabama has the highest infant mortality rate of any state. The United States as a country, as a whole, has the highest infant mortality rate of any industrialized country. If the object of such abortion legislation is to save lives, then one would assume that reproductive health care would be a top legislative priority and available to all women at nominal cost. Infant deaths are directly correlated to poverty and lack of medical care and affect a disproportionate number of working-class women and/or women of color. Second, women are human beings and have human rights, the most basic of which is the right to control one's own body. The legislation is about hatred of women, not about saving lives. Roe v. Wade establishes women's right to choose abortion if she wishes to end a pregnancy. The Roe decision did not mandate abortion. It made it a legal option. Roe v. Wade was based on the principle that a woman is entitled to privacy about such a decision under the Fourth Amendment, and the 14th Amendment guarantees that all persons shall have equal protection of the laws and due process of law. These draconian state laws, either banning all abortions or severely restricting access to them, is in direct violation of the Roe decision. Yes, if these laws are challenged in court, many right-wing Republican legislators believe they now have enough conservative votes on the Supreme Court to overturn the Roe decision. However, the bar for overturning Roe, which is what's called established law, is much higher than in an ordinary case. As abortions are banned or severely restricted in some states, women who have the money will travel to another state to secure an abortion if they feel they must end a pregnancy. We should understand that a woman's right to control her own body is a fundamental human right. It is shocking to me that we are still arguing about this in the 21st century, and that recognition of human rights is considered liberal. It may be liberal, but it is really about the recognition of women's full equality and dignity. Some statistics about abortion are useful to consider based on the Center for Disease Control in 2015. 42% of women having abortions said it was because they couldn't afford a child or because they were done having children. Another 25% said they were not ready to have children. 86% of abortions are performed on unmarried women. The vast majority of abortions are performed on women between the ages of 20 and 30. Teen abortions account for less than 10%, contrary to many stereotypes about pregnancy. Clinics run by Planned Parenthood and others provide basic reproductive health services for women at low cost, of which abortion is only a small portion. The sustained attacks on Planned Parenthood really demonstrates again that the objective of right-wing Republicans is not to save lives, but to jeopardize women's lives, especially if they are working class and/or women of color, and/or in rural areas where health care is less available. Resistance will be in the streets and in the courts, And history teaches us that women will seek reproductive care, including abortion and contraception, illegally if they have to. This was true at the turn of the 20th century with well-known figures like Margaret Sanger and Emma Goldman, and the lesser-known black doctors Susan Smith, Stuart McKinney, whose medical practice in New York focused on women's reproductive health. And it was true in the 1950s and 60s when there were underground providers. It is also true that reversal of the Roe decision will result in thousands of women dying and or injuring themselves in an effort to end a pregnancy. Again, disproportionately working class women and women of color. This spate of legislation is about hatred of women, and most especially women of color. For this reason, it is both misogynist and racist. The resistance will once again take up the banner of the inviolability of all women's human rights.